I work with an entitled Karen. She refuses to come to work on time and gifted me literal trash for Christmas. Money for the business also goes missing every month. For the sake of telling the story a little smoother, I'm going to explain some things up front. I, female, early 30s, let's call me Molly, am the manager in the accounting office of a very small loan company. Like, really small. We have less than 30 offices with only 2 employees at each office. For this reason, we are kind of low-tech, old-fashioned. I'm talking paper timesheets that get faxed to our office. We're also the corporate office that handles the payroll. Our office hours are 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. with a half-hour lunch. Me and my employee, who we'll call Sally, work this shift. Our boss, who we'll call Greg, is the owner and CEO. He works in the office starting at 9 a.m. till whenever he leaves for the day. Most of the time, that's around the time we leave. Sometimes it's earlier due to errands he needs to run. So, in October 2022, Sally, female, early 30s, gave us a note that her doctor wants to have daily appointments with her indefinitely. She let us know she would need to leave at 3:30 every day. Greg granted that request and even gave her the opportunity to come in early so she didn't miss any of her 8 hours each day. So, she began coming to work between 6:45 and 7 o'clock and would take however long of a lunch she needed to so she would have an 8-hour day. Due to a combination of our fiscal year-end work in October and November 2022, playing catch-up from December 2022 to February 2023, and the other coworker, who we'll call Irene, leaving the company in February 2023, so we had to play catch-up again for several months before we got used to the bigger workload. I hadn't been able to pay too close attention to Sally's work. But in the middle of August 2023, I began to suspect her. I realized that the tasks Sally had in the morning would usually take me an hour and a half to do, which meant I would be relatively finished by the time I would arrive at 8:30. Sally, on the other hand, would only have stuff halfway done. Now, I knew Sally worked slower than me since I knew the job better than she did, but this still seemed very slow. I began to suspect Sally was either not arriving as early as she said she was the only one in the office before 8:30, or she was arriving on time but wasn't working. On August 21st, Monday, I decided to come in early to the office since I had to make up time due to a doctor appointment later in the week. So, I arrived at work at 6:40. 6:45 rolled around, no Sally. 6:50, no Sally. 7 o'clock, same thing. Sally arrived at 7:20. Now, okay, maybe she ran into traffic. However, that's a bit of a coincidence that the one day I show up early unannounced is also the day she happens to be late. But I waited to see what time Sally would write down on the timesheet. However, she didn't write down her time until Tuesday right before she left. She had written down that she had arrived at 7:05. I asked her about it, and her response was, "I must have copied it down wrong from my spreadsheet. That's strange, 'cause you hadn't arrived at 7:05 any other day that week. Just where did you copy it down from?" Now, I am curious as to what time Sally puts down when she believes no one has seen what time she arrives. So, for September 4th to 15th, I would arrive in the parking lot across the street and read a book and eat breakfast while I wait to see what time Sally would arrive. Every single day, she would arrive around 7:15 or 7:20. But would write down 6:45 or 6:50, a half-hour discrepancy every single day. And we have no way of knowing how long she's been stealing a half hour every day. She could have been doing this for the past year since her schedule changed. On September 18th, I write down Sally's actual times from these 2 weeks on a paper and tell her to correct all the times I indicated. Sally says that she will use the office clock to write down her times from now on. Wait a minute, you're saying that your phone is a half hour earlier than the rest of the world? But only when you arrive at work. When you go to lunch and leave work, it matches the rest of the clocks. And then switches during the night so your arrival time can be wrong again the next day? Wow, that's a pretty glitchy phone you got there. On September 20th, after Sally left, I installed a camera that connects to an app in my phone. I put the camera in a place where it wouldn't be able to see any computers/paperwork and turned off the microphone. I didn't want to risk any company info being seen/heard. I only needed to see when Sally arrived. Where I ended up placing it, I was able to see Sally where she sat at her desk. On 3 of the following days, Sally would arrive 10 to 15 minutes after the time she would write down. I speak with Greg about this, and we decide to write her up. By the way, usually when an employee is caught forging the timesheet like this, it's an immediate termination. At any other office, she would have gotten fired in the beginning of September after I first discovered the half-hour forgery. I am deciding to give her a chance to make this whole thing right. On September 26th, Tuesday, I give Sally the write-up when she arrives. Sally, I'll sign it, but I don't know why. I mean, I get here at 7 o'clock. Okay, there's a sign right there. Who signs an official write-up when their employer is lying or setting them up? Me. I've observed you arriving between 7:10 and 7:15. Sally reads the write-up and then keeps it at her desk for a bit after signing it. After plenty of time, I ask for it back. She grabs it, so I lean forward and hold my hand out. Our desks are right next to each other, but Sally flings it at my desk. The whole thing is made better by the fact that Greg is out of town Tuesday through Thursday. So Sally proceeds to be angry and have an attitude all the way through Thursday. She refuses to talk or answer the phones. She does that tossing/flicking papers around, aggressive typing, heavily setting things down thing people do when they're frustrated or angry, which she did all day long. She sped out of the parking lot and down the street so fast that I could hear her engine rev and tires squeal from inside the building. On September 27th, Wednesday, Sally is still doing that slamming things thing. I enjoy not responding to her whatsoever. I could see out of the corner of my eye that she would slam something down and look at me. I wouldn't give any kind of reaction, wouldn't look at her, and it would piss her off. Sally would then start slamming things around again. I admit that was fun. On September 28th, Thursday, I see on the camera that Sally arrives at 7 o'clock, but then I watch her sit on her phone for 45 minutes. She is still having attitude issues, and unbelievably is still slamming things. After she leaves for the day, I then see the calendar that Sally keeps on her desk as I was passing by. On the box for September 26th, the day she was written up, she had written the words, F*********** ing joke. The audacity of her to write that in plain view of everyone in the office and think she wouldn't get in trouble for it. On September 29th, Friday, Sally arrives at 7 o'clock but sits on her phone for 30 minutes while vaping. Not sure about other cities or states, but it's illegal to smoke or vape inside a building in the city where our office is. But Greg is back this day, and I had been texting him what's been going on. He had texted back he wanted to do a meeting on Friday. So, the three of us go into the break room for a meeting. Greg, so Sally, what's been going on with this timesheet thing? Sally, I forget to write down the time when I arrive. Greg, okay, well, whether it's done on purpose or through negligence, we can't have wrong times on the timesheet. So, from now on, you won't be able to come to work before Molly gets here at 8:30. Now, are there any other problems you'd like to discuss with us? Sally begins getting worked up. I feel like I can't talk to her. She creates such a hostile work environment. Now I am blown away. Me? Hostile? I'm autistic, so I'm naturally shy and hate socializing, so I usually don't talk to anyone very much. Everyone I tell this story to, their eyes widen when I mention this, 'cause there's no way anyone would ever describe me as hostile. Luckily, Greg interrupts her to defend me. This isn't a hostile work environment. Sally, backpedaling, well, I mean, she gets mad at her printer and bangs on it, and that just flashes me back to stuff. I mean, I'm trying to work on myself and the anxiety, and she just sends me back. Oh, so now, we're claiming we have PTSD and that my violent actions are giving her flashbacks? Who is it laughing right along with me every time my printer jams? By the way, I know she's lying about the PTSD, 'cause I have a couple friends with PTSD and recognize the signs. Sally doesn't show any sign of fear or panic or shrinking away from things, nothing like that. There are no signs whatsoever of her being alarmed by anything I do. Oh, not to mention the double standards. You're allowed to slam things around, for 3 straight days, by the way, but I'm not? Anyway, we wrap up the meeting after Greg underlines, for Sally's benefit, that everyone in the office needs to get along. On October 2nd, the next Monday, I had a good drive and happened to get there at 8:20. Sally arrives at 8:25 and comes in, stopping at my desk. Sally, annoyed, are you gonna be early all week? Me, frowning and caught off guard, I don't know. It just depends how long my drive takes. Sally, with a snarky attitude, 'cause I had to keep driving around waiting for you, so if you're gonna be early, I'd like to know. Okay, first of all, no one is forcing you to drive around. You can park your car in the parking lot. Do you really think we're gonna fire you for sitting in the parking lot while you wait for me? We only said you couldn't come in and work before I do. And second, it's none of your business when I get to work. My shift starts at 8:30, therefore, you should aim for 8:30, just like Greg told you to do. How am I supposed to predict the exact minute I get to work? And you're gonna get angry at me cause I didn't show up before my shift starts? Since when is it a requirement of mine to come into work before I start working? Well, a bit of malicious compliance in this entitled story. If I can see I'm going to arrive at work more than 5 minutes early, I stop at the store just down the road and shop until 8:30. Cause guess what? Sally gets there who knows how early and sits in the gas station across the street, waiting for me. Fine, you want to be that way? I can be petty too. By the way, Sally has a radio talk show she listens to from before I get to work until it ends at 10 o'clock. I'm not into talk shows, but it wasn't too annoying most of the time, so I didn't say anything about it. The reason why I started having a problem listening to it was that they would get into inappropriate things, toy review for example. It made me super uncomfortable when they did segments like this. From the moment Sally was written up, she started only listening to the show on her headphones, thinking she was punishing me by me not getting to hear the show. Joke's on her. Sally did me a favor by not having to listen to that thing. Sally was also told that she is no longer allowed to take smoke breaks on the clock. As no one else in the office takes breaks but chooses to work through them, this change would be made so all employees were equal now. But here's the interesting thing. Sally suddenly stopped taking smoke breaks at all, but her bathroom breaks grew more numerous and longer. When she had been taking smoke breaks, the alarm on her phone would go off at specific times, such as 2 o'clock. She would then go outside to take her smoke break. After the on-the-clock smoke break privilege was taken away, the same alarms would go off, such as 2 o'clock. She would then disappear to the bathroom for 15 minutes. And I even smelled smoke in there when I went in there right after one of these long bathroom breaks. Ever since the write-up, there's been attitude every once in a while. Most of the time, I have no idea what it is I did that could possibly have set her off that day. All I know is that Sally's suddenly slamming things around again. PTSD cured now, is it? And she's still constantly making mistakes, like she's always done. On November 27th, Sally is working on the funding, loan proceeds funded onto a customer's debit card. What we do is get the list of customers, determine how much the office funded that customer, transfer the money from the office's bank account to the holding account, and then transfer the total from the holding account to the account that directly funds the debit cards to replenish the money. We had 2 customers with similar names, say, John Smith and Jack Smith. Sally hadn't paid attention to the whole name, and had applied John's $0 funding to Jack. However, Jack had been funded $250. So, that money was missed, and I had to make a separate transfer for it. On December 4th, Sally is working on the funding and writes down $0 for a customer. But the report from the office says he actually got $96. On December 8th and 9th, we discovered 2 checks that were supposed to be sent to our office, one from October, one from September. Neither had been cashed, and neither had ever reached us, even though we had the rest of the paperwork that would have come with those checks. Due to the dots I had connected, I had a pretty strong hunch that Sally wasn't thoroughly checking the mail envelopes to make sure they'd been completely emptied before they got thrown away. I believe these checks were still in some envelopes that were then thrown away by Sally. On December 11th, on the bank reconciliation sheets we work at the end of the month, like balancing a checkbook, one of Sally's offices was out of balance by $68, and she couldn't find it. I couldn't find it either. I pulled out the one done for the month before. I couldn't find it there either. But I did notice one thing. The checks that hadn't cleared the bank yet didn't add up to the total amount of outstanding checks Sally had written down. By $68. I go back to the month before that one. There were a total of $68 in old checks that never got cashed and therefore should have gotten written off on the fiscal year end at the end of October. But she hadn't transferred them to the new month's sheet. So, now, we have to hold on to them for a whole year to write off next October. The same day, I went through all the offices to double-check the GL codes that we post the expense checks to. GL codes determine where an expense gets coded. Example, post an electricity payment to the GL code for utilities. The day previously, Sally had gotten several GL codes incorrect in the Miller office. She had forgotten to change the codes from the one for the checkbook to the ones for the expense account. She had caught those ones since it affected the balance of the checkbook, so I had helped her fix those properly. However, there were expense checks sent to a GL code that wasn't the right one that Sally hadn't caught. I talk with Greg, as I feel that every time I turn around, I am either retraining Sally on stuff I've trained her on multiple times, I'm correcting mistakes on stuff Sally should know how to do by now, cause again, I've trained her multiple times, or I'm disciplining Sally about stuff she's doing wrong. Greg asks how many mistakes due to carelessness she's made in the last 2 weeks. I check my notes and tell him 4. He says that's too excessive for an accounting office. We need to write her up. So I made the write-up, but I just know I'm going to be dealing with the same attitude as the last time I had to write her up. And guess what? Greg's out of town till Thursday again. I used my phone this time to record the audio of the interaction. That way, if Sally has attitude towards me again, I'm able to play the recording to Greg so he can hear what Sally's like when he's not here, which is why the following conversation is pretty much word for word. On December 12th, Tuesday, I sat her down first thing. So in the past couple weeks, I've noticed some errors happening due to carelessness, and they'd become a bit excessive for an accounting office. The most important thing in an accounting office is accuracy. That's why we focus so much on thoroughness and attention to detail. So, whatever needs to happen to lessen those errors, whether it's slowing the pace of the work itself or double and triple checking the work before it's finished, it needs to happen. For example, when I work the payroll, after I get the total for all the offices, I then subtract each person's individual hours to double check my entries. That way, if there is an error, at least I know it wasn't cause I was going too fast or not paying attention or something. So, whatever you need to do to decrease the mistakes, please. Sally, what errors are we talking about? I have a page here with the items from the last couple weeks. Hand her the write-up. Sally, reads the pages for a minute, okay. So, whatever you need to do to. Sally, talking quickly cause she's pissed now, I'm gonna need more time and focus strictly on funding. I don't want to touch mail. I don't want to touch anything else. I want to focus strictly on that. Cause I'm getting 80 plus a day, which was a lie, we never get nearly that much, and now, I'm gonna start getting in trouble if it's not 110%. I am human. I will make mistakes. So, if that's not allowed then, shrugs, let me know I guess. I'll talk to Greg and I guess figure something out. I am human, and I am gonna make mistakes A. B. I feel like crap. Greg, has been in here sick the last week. I caught whatever he has. I've been hacking. I've been sicker than sh*** the last week. I am trying. You guys usually have until the 12th to close the month. Since I've worked here, I've closed before the 8th. Yeah, I made mistakes. I told you I made a mistake on the Miller office. I knew what happened. So, to throw it in my face again that I already made that mistake is kinda rude. But, shrugs, I'm actually kinda shocked to see that on there. Well, you did catch the errors involving the checkbook, but there were other mistakes on that office that you didn't catch, and that's the reason that was listed on there. Sally goes back to her work, and I decide to not ask her to sign the write-up I had given her right away since she was diving right into the funding. She had expressed she wanted to focus solely on it to minimize mistakes. I wanted to use positive reinforcement to convey that this was good behavior and good thinking, so I decided to wait for her to finish before asking her to sign and return the write-up. Now, here's the issues with her little outburst above. Sally is complaining that she's human and makes mistakes, and we're not allowing mistakes. We're not saying that she can't make mistakes, cause she's right. Everyone makes mistakes. I make mistakes. What we're saying is that she's making mistakes much too often. Sally says the reason for these mistakes the last 2 weeks is cause she's been sick the last week or so cause she caught what Greg had. Do you see the timing problem there? Also, these kinds of mistakes have been happening for months and months. I only brought these examples up cause they were recent. Sally pointed out the fact that she closes each month really quick. We don't care how fast things get done. Our goal isn't to get things done quickly but to get things done accurately. If we happen to get it done quickly, that's just a bonus. We would rather things go slow than to have errors causing problems or costing us money cause we didn't take the time to make sure it was correct. Sally states it's rude that I'm throwing her error back in her face. You already know my reaction to that. She obviously doesn't know how a job works. Just cause we discussed this error already doesn't mean it can't go on the write-up. This is just one of the examples that required us to do a write-up. We're not doing this cause we want to write you up or that we're looking for excuses to get you in trouble. We're doing our job. If a situation needs correcting, we have to correct it. We can't just ignore it. And obviously, me talking about your errors all these months hasn't helped. You're still making the same mistakes. So, now, we've had to escalate to a write-up on paper. Sally doesn't say another word. She, as expected, starts doing her tossing things cause I am pissed off thing. I just go back to my work. I've said my piece, now we can put it behind us and move on. Now, we have until 10:30 to make the transfers for this funding program in order to get the money back to the account the same day. We are still missing the paperwork for 2 customers from an office. FYI, when we're missing paperwork, we call the office and ask them to fax it. If we still don't get it when it gets close to the transfer deadline, we call again and just ask for the amount to get it done. So, at 10:20, Sally turns to me. Sally, what do I do for these 2 customers? Do I just skip them? Me, frowning, do what you usually do when you don't have the paperwork in time. Call the office. Sally, in a sharp tone, I did. She's assuming I mean call the office to tell them to fax it. Me, ignoring her attitude outbursts, call up the office and ask for the dollar amounts. Sally, but I don't want to write down the amount without seeing the actual paperwork. If I'm gonna get in trouble for errors now, I don't want to take down what could be the wrong dollar amount over the phone. I mean, I think that's only fair to me. Me, in the instances that were mentioned, they weren't cases of taking down an amount over the phone. They were instances where we had paperwork, or a report to see the amount. We would never write you up if there was a possibility that the office gave you the wrong amount over the phone. Sally stares at me for a second and turns back to her desk. I turn back to my own work as Sally then calls up the office. I had to deal with her attitude the rest of the day, throwing mail into the mailbox, throwing open the letter folding machine so it made a big bang on the table. I was trying to still be the usual friendly, professional person I am at work. I told her, "See you tomorrow," and everything. Sally wouldn't talk to me unless she had to. This is when I discovered that Sally has a habit of lashing out at me when she gets in trouble. The first write-up involved her trying to drag me under the bus by claiming I'm hostile. This time, it was more personal. See, we do a Christmas gift exchange at the office. We each buy each other a gift. I had searched over and over trying to find something Sally would like. I finally found this desk calendar with gnomes on it. She likes both of these things, so I got it, and a couple small items. I opened my gift from Sally, and among a few cheap little things, I found out Sally's own nearly empty bottle of nail polish remover. Wow, this is the thanks I get for not firing you back in September with the whole timesheet forgery thing? Update. So, the next several weeks, I am noticing more problems, but here's some of the highlights. Ever since we had issues of the office's checks going randomly missing, Sally had apparently decided to just stop throwing any envelope away when opening the mail. She would supposedly search the envelopes/paperwork, and then keep the envelopes with the paperwork. So, instead of doing her job better, she would decide to just stop doing the job at all. After all, you can't get in trouble for screwing it up if you aren't doing it, right? However, this resulted in items getting left with the paperwork, which sometimes wouldn't get touched for several weeks due to being busy, that had needed to be collected or addressed right away. Sally's careless mistakes continued at about the same rate, average of 2 to 3 a week. She would put deposit slips/emails with the wrong office's report, put one office's mail in another office's bin, put one office's funding papers in another office's bin, put one office's bills in the folder for their correspondence and vice versa, put one office's bills in the folder for another office's bills, put the new month's bills in the folder without taking out the old month's bills so they would get mixed up. I could go on and on. Sally would still ask for help on things she shouldn't need help on anymore, cause I had helped her many times on items exactly like it in the 2 years she's worked here. I mean, the whole point of asking for help when learning new things on a job is so you can take the input you're given and use it to get better at the job so you don't have to ask for help anymore. I mean, what kind of office works by their employees constantly needing to be walked through everything every day? Sally would even ask for help on things no one would need to ask for help on. For example, she asked me, "An office took a deposit to the bank without showing it on their report. How do I write that up in the letter to fax to them?" Exactly what you just said to me. Or another time, she asks how long she should wait before calling an office back. Well, how long do you think you should give them? Just use your good judgment. You don't need help with that. Again, you've been here 2 years. On January 26th, I take the deck bills, correspondence faxes, and timesheets out of their folders to scan them into the computer. Now, one thing the bills should always have on them are the check number used to pay for this purchase, and the date it was paid. The offices themselves are supposed to write this on there, but they don't always, which is why it is our job to write it on there if it's missing. I had noticed when I scanned NOV's bills around November 30th that a lot of Sally's offices don't have that info written on them. So, I explained to her what needed to be written on every bill/receipt. I now flipped through the deck and Jan bills of her offices really quick to check them. There are quite a few of them with no info written down on them. There's strike one for noncompliance. Another task we would do several days a week, that's Sally's responsibility, is to check the bank accounts online. She is to look at the bank balances and report any low balances to Greg, or me if Greg isn't there. She is then to look at the transactions in order to see if anything looks fraudulent. Since we are a loan company, check fraud is very common for us. So, we look at the checks for anything funny looking, and we look to see if there are any auto debits, like when you use your bank account online to pay for a bill, that would tell us if someone got hold of our bank account info. On January 30th, at 1:15 p.m., I asked if any of the bank balances were low. Greg was out of town for a few days. Sally said she had forgotten to check the bank accounts that morning. Weird, cause you had to check the Dallas office to make sure the money we sent them had shown up. How did you get the login sheet out to look in their bank account but then forget about checking all the bank accounts? This just further cemented in my mind that she was not checking these bank accounts the way she should. I was 100% positive that all she does when logging into these bank accounts is checking the balances to give to Greg but then never checks the transactions. I know this cause, 1. I've observed Sally only logging in to write down the balances and then logging back out. She had some flimsy excuse ready when I asked her about it. 2. There have been auto debits that appeared in bank accounts that we didn't find for weeks until I happened to see it for some reason, and guess what? She never pointed those out to us. And 3. Sally hadn't bothered to check the bank account balances since Greg was out of town, so clearly she only felt the need to check the balances. There's strike 2 for noncompliance. And even more bad mistakes or decisions. At the end of Jan, we discovered that Sally had mailed the employees' W-2s to the manager's home addresses instead of to the offices to distribute to their employees. We had an office that moved locations to right across the street, so the only thing that changed in their address was their street number. 12 Main Street instead of 11 Main Street. I explained this to Sally and gave her an updated list of the office's addresses. 3 weeks later, we get a call from that office saying that mail we send to them keeps going to their landlord's house. I checked the address labels Sally had created for herself. Sure enough, it had the wrong address on them. I go to grab the lease, and at the top is where the tenant's new address is listed. And all the way at the bottom of the page in the paragraph titled, Rent, where it lists where to send the rent is the landlord's home address. And that's the address Sally had chosen to be the new office's address on her address labels. Sally hadn't been faxing the offices to ask for bills/receipts that never made it to us. I used the last towel on a roll of paper towels, so I went to the cabinets to grab another. We were out. Sally is in charge of keeping track of supplies that need ordering, so I go to Sally and say we're completely out of paper towels. We need to order some. Sally responds, "No one ever tells me when they grab the last roll so I know when to order them." Excuse me, since when is it our job to tell you to do your job? It's your responsibility to keep track of supplies. You should be checking the level of paper towels, toilet paper, Kleenex, etc., to see when you need to order them. So, I knew she needed a second warning write-up for carelessness cause of the numerous mistakes since the first warning write-up in the middle of deck, and I would be giving Sally a first warning write-up for negligence cause of her not asking the offices for missing bills and not writing the info on the bills I had told her to do at the end of November. However, it was only a few days from February, which was the time for performance reviews. So, rather than doing a write-up now and then in a week or so doing a performance review that was one of the worst performance reviews I've ever heard of, I decided to just do it in one fell swoop. You know, just get it all out of the way with one bad conversation, one bad day, and then both of us can hopefully put it behind us and move on. I decided to do the performance review and write-ups on February 5th, Monday. It went much smoother cause Greg was there, so Sally couldn't really give me lip or lash out by showing attitude and anger like she had previously. On February 7th, Wednesday, I logged in to get the transactions for an office who is switching banks. I wanted to get an updated list of outstanding checks so they know how many checks are left before they can close the old bank account. And what do I see? Someone had used the bank account to pay $100 on their AT&T bill. I call the office and find out it was actually them, so no fraud there. But I then asked Sally if she had seen that when checking the bank accounts. She said she didn't remember. Obviously, I have found my proof that she is either not checking them or isn't paying attention when she does. I have a discussion with Greg about it, and we decide I need to have a sit down with her about her not doing her job. She is sick on Thursday, so I plan to talk with her the next day she comes in. On February 9th, Friday, I begin the conversation about checking the bank accounts and how important it is. I am planning to say things like, "We expect you to do this job, you've been told multiple times to do this task. If you're not going to do the job, then you're welcome to go find another one," etc. But she cuts me off at the beginning with an excuse of, "Well, I didn't know what I should be looking for, now I know." And it broke me. She does this exact thing every time I have to have a conversation with her. She has an excuse ready to go on the tip of her tongue, always spins it around so it's not actually her fault. It's always, "Well, I didn't know that, but now I do. And I was just done." I didn't continue the conversation, even though I needed to, cause I just broke down in tears from the stress of having to discipline her, and knowing that nothing will ever come of it, but having our hands legally tied to be able to fire her right now. I cried nonstop for over 4 hours. On February 12th, Monday, I sat down to continue the conversation, this time with a written statement for her to sign. "Me, you respond a lot of the time that you don't know how to do things, which is very frustrating, cause you've been shown multiple times how to do these tasks. It's very inefficient and wasteful that I have to constantly check all of your work and retrain you on the same thing over and over again. This needs to change. This job is about accuracy and accountability. Sally, you're not giving me a chance to improve. I never hear, 'Good job,' from you. All I ever hear is, 'You're doing a bad job, sign this paper.' I get in trouble every time I ask for help, so I guess I'll just follow the instructions and hope I'm doing it right." The problems with that response. You've worked here for 2 years, Sally. You've had plenty of time to improve. The reason you never hear, "Good job," is cause you're not doing a good job. How am I supposed to tell you, "Good job," but also need to give you a write-up for doing a bad job? If you're getting multiple write-ups for doing a bad job, don't you think that's a sign that something is wrong? I mean, she thinks that managers should be telling their employees good job on everything they do right. No, you're expected to do these tasks. We're not going to congratulate you every time you do your basic job requirements like some toddler that needs constant positive reinforcement so they know that doing something right is a good thing. You will hear, "Good job," when you are doing a really good job on something, when you go above and beyond. I mean, do you think Greg tells me, "Good job," when I'm just doing my job as expected? No. I've never had a manager constantly tell me, "Good job," all the time. Phew. Sorry about that. Kinda went on a crazy rant there. I'm good now. Here's another example of her mentality of, "If I don't do the job, I can't get in trouble for doing it wrong." She's going to stop asking for help instead of using the help I've given her to do better. I mean, if you're making these mistakes when you are asking for help, how many more are you going to make when you stop asking for help? How does this make any logical sense? Well, here's another chance for some malicious compliance. She claimed she didn't know how to check the bank accounts, right? Well, my job as the manager is to make sure my employees know how to do their job. So I need to sit down with her and train her how to check the bank accounts. Again. Even though I know she already knows how to do it. So, every time you tell me that the reason why you didn't do a job is cause you didn't know how to do it right, well, we're going to sit down and waste both our times and annoy you having to be retrained on something you do, in fact, know how to do. Sally continues making careless mistakes and not doing stuff she doesn't think she should have to do. Like answering the phones. It's her job to answer the phones. That's something I as the manager should be delegating to her. However, she never answers the phone unless I literally can't. So, I had asked her to start answering the phone more. She will wait until the last possible second before answering the phone. By that time, it's already rung twice, so I have to answer it before it goes on any longer or they hang up. One time, we were both away from our desks when the phone rang. We both went to answer it, but she was closer and got to her desk before me, put her hand on the phone, and watched me until I got to my desk before she picked it up. With a comment of, "Oh, laughs, I didn't want to make you walk all the way to your desk." Well, you did, anyway, you little jerk. On February 27th, Sally asks for help on a report. She says that my note stating the office is overdeposited $28 on report 1 but fixed on report 2 by being $28 underdeposited didn't work out. She says that they were never over by $28 in the first place. I take the report to look it over. Her calculator tape adding up the deposits shows the bank is in balance, but I don't see deposit slips. Me, where are the deposit slips? Sally, I haven't gotten them yet. Me, trying to comprehend her logic, then how do you have the deposit amounts added on this tape? Sally, I got the amounts from the report. Me, you. My brain trying not to implode at this point. You can't add up amounts to see if the bank has too much or too little money in it without knowing what was actually taken to the bank. The amounts on the report don't always equal what was taken to the bank. I log into the bank account and discover just that. The report says they took $500 to the bank, but their deposit says $528. They were indeed $28 over-deposited. I then lecture her, for the second time in a few months, on the correct way to account for the deposits at the bank, that we are only to use the dollar amounts on the bank's deposit receipt. The first time was her getting the deposit amount from what was written on the deposit slip instead of what the bank gave us credit for on their printed receipt. The bank had shorted us $500, and we never knew until her deposits didn't work out when reconciling the bank statement at the end of the month. We were missing $500 for 4 weeks. It's a miracle we didn't overdraw the account. Another task that we do several days a week is checking the CFPB website. This is a government website that uses federal regulations to monitor financial institutions. It's like the Better Business Bureau, but more official. Customers can make complaints through them, prompting an investigation to make sure we're following the federal guidelines. We have 2 weeks to respond to a complaint before it is past due. On February 29th, Greg just happens to be looking at an email inbox that he never checks, cause after all, we're checking the CFPB website, so he doesn't have to look there, right? There is a complaint in 2 of the portals that have been in there since January 22nd. He immediately marches out and tells Sally about them. Greg, aren't you checking the CFPB sites? Sally, yeah, I am. Really? Then how come you didn't print this complaint off to give to Greg in the last 6 weeks? She came back from lunch to a second warning write-up given by me for negligence. On March 5th, Tuesday, we are working on reconciling the bank statements so we can close the month of February. Sally brings me a Jan bank statement for an office. Sally, this never cleared in February. I look at the bank statement. It's an electronic deposit of $254 on January 31st. I remember this. She had asked me at the beginning of February why this deposit wasn't recorded on the office's report. I explained that since it didn't show up in the bank account until the last day of Jan, they might not have known about it before the end of the month, and so recorded it on the 1st of February. We will wait until the first report of February. If it's still not recorded, then we'll bring that to the office's attention. And here she is, clearly telling me she hadn't brought it to anyone's attention all month long. Me, staring at the bank statement as I try to prevent my autistic brain from exploding at her while also trying to prevent a spontaneous stroke. You didn't keep track of this all month? Sally, well, I didn't know if it was treated differently cause it was OTBP, one-time bill pay, which is the electronic deposit. Oh, what a shocker, she once again didn't know how to do something. Me, but we talked about this. If it wasn't on the 1st of the month, we needed to address it. Sally, okay, well, now I know that we treat this the same as other deposits. Goes nonchalantly back to her desk like it was no big deal, like she hadn't just revealed she had once again disobeyed my detailed instructions. Me, seeing her flagrant disregard for the seriousness of the situation and wondering just how on earth she could once again think that not doing her job would have no consequences. This is exactly what Greg talks about over and over, about how we can't leave errors like this to sit for weeks and weeks, that these need to be dealt with as they happen. Sally, still as easygoing as if she had simply used the wrong color highlighter. Okay, I'll make note of that. Now, I am getting really pissed off. She keeps saying, oh, now I know that OTBP is treated the same as everything else. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you didn't know it's treated the same. I specifically told you to take care of it if it didn't appear on the 1st of February. It didn't matter what kind of deposit it was. I said to tell me if it wasn't on the 1st of February. Now, this was right before she leaves at 3:30, so by the time I'm finished with my text conversation with Greg, cause he isn't there that afternoon, she has already left. But I'm telling Greg that I have once again caught her being negligent, and she's already had 2 written warnings about this, which means our next step is letting her go. Not to mention, her carelessness is still continuing. He said that he supports my decision to let her go. By the way, the final decision happened an hour after she left. If I had known before she left that we were indeed going to fire her, I would have done it before she left so she didn't have to come all the way to work in the morning just to leave again. So, on March 6th, Wednesday, I arrive early to work so I can be prepared. I am standing at my desk, watching her come in. This is unusual, so she frowns as she approaches me. Me, Sally, we need to talk. Sally still frowns at me. Me, handing her the typed-up notice. We are going to read this together. When reconciling the month of Jan, around February 5th, it was brought to my attention that we had a deposit that hadn't been reconciled. I gave you instructions to wait a report to see if it works out. If not, you would need to bring it to mine and the office's attention for further instructions. This wasn't done. It wasn't until March 5th that you brought this to my attention again. You have been told many times the importance of reconciling the financials of the office. You have been warned several times of negligence. This is another example of negligence with respect to your job. All you had to do was follow my instructions. It is for this reason that it is now time to terminate your employment. Sally, when did you tell me to do this? Me, thinking. I kinda just told you when I told you do that, but okay. When you showed me the Jan bank statement. Sally, yesterday? Me, you showed me the Jan bank statement a month ago when you were reconciling January. I told you to wait for the 1st of February and then. Sally, you did no such thing. Me, yes I did, Sally. Sally, when does Greg get here? Me, around 9, like usual. Sally, I'm calling him, 'cause this is ridiculous. You've had it out for me from the very beginning. Me, no I haven't. Sally, yeah you have. Just like the other two. Sets her bags at the front door, goes outside, and calls Greg. How could I have had it out for you from the very beginning when we didn't have problems for the first year and a half you worked here? If I'd had it out for you from the beginning, you wouldn't have had a job the past 6 months. Need I remind you what Greg told you about the timesheet thing being something we fire someone for on the spot, but that Molly had gone to bat for you and gave you a second chance? Why would I have done that if I had wanted you gone from the start? Just like the other two. She's talking about Irene, who had left in February 2023, and another employee, who we'll call Phil. Phil had been fired by Greg, by the way, for continuing to watch movies on his phone at his desk despite being told multiple times by Greg to not do that. And Irene? She wasn't fired. She gave her 2 weeks' notice. And we then discovered when going through the work she's been doing as we started taking over her tasks that she didn't just not do jobs. She would actually forge the work so she wouldn't have to work. A bank imbalance of $2.65. Well, I'll just add it to the imbalance that's been building up for who knows how many months and just label it as an overdeposit from the end of the month. That way, I don't have to look into why the bank isn't balancing. But no, I had it out for them, apparently. Does she really think that calling Greg was gonna reverse my firing her? Does she really think I would do something as drastic as writing her up or firing her without discussing it with my supervisor first? Did she really think I would do this behind his back? Apparently she did, 'cause Greg confirmed that Sally tried telling him about all the stuff I'd been doing to her as if he didn't know. She hung up on him when he explained that he's been told everything as it happens and he supports this decision. Sally, storming back into the office and towards her desk. I'm not signing anything. Me, okay. Sally begins packing up her desk. I had known she kept a lot of personal items at the office, so I had gotten a big box or two out and placed them nearby for her to use to pack up her desk. Me, we can give you a box if you need it. Sally, I don't need sh** from you guys. Me, the only thing we'll need is your office key. Sally, you'll get it when you get it. I'm packing my desk. Me, okay. I go back to work, keeping an eye on her as she packs to make sure she doesn't take anything she's not supposed to or damage any company property. Sally at some point decides to use the boxes she didn't want from us to pack up her many items. She takes both boxes to the front door where her bags are and sets them down to put the last of her things in. She picks up one box to take outside. Sally, you are the worst manager ever. Goes out the door. Me, shrug. Sally comes back in for the final box. Seriously, you're the most evil person I've ever met. Leaves. Really? I rank worse than the guy that beat you up. I'm worse than him. I continued watching her to see if she's going to come back to give up her office key. As she packed up her car, another employee had arrived. We'll call him Randy. He had run into her on the way in and asks me if Sally quit. I explained, no, she was let go. I then see that Sally has gotten behind the wheel of her car without coming back to give us the office key. Me, well, I guess we'll just change the locks. Randy then takes it upon himself to go out to her car. He phrased it very gently by saying he wanted to spare her having to come back in to turn the key in. Sally, I guess Molly didn't have the balls to do it herself. Hands the key over. And then she was gone. Despite having to do the entire corporate office's work all by myself and falling steadily behind little by little, I have never been more happy. I had forgotten how much I loved my job and how much I couldn't wait to get to work. I haven't been this stress-free in 6 months, and it feels fantastic. And the great part is, I'm not really falling as far behind as I expected to without her. Having to do 2 people's jobs by myself is only affecting me a little. Really goes to show you how bad she was for the company, and for my job when she disrupted everything that much. For example, me and her would get through maybe 5 to 6 offices reports between us in a single day when playing catch-up after closing the previous month. One day, I caught up on 10 offices reports in a single day. By myself. Oh, did I mention she smoked marijuana most days on her way to work or while on her lunch break? We could never actually prove it. But come on, you don't smell that strongly of marijuana on only select days if you aren't smoking it recently. If it was leftover from the smell of your house or car, you would smell like that every day. But it was only some days she would come into work or back from lunch smelling like that. Obviously, smoking on the job. So very glad to be rid of her, and her awful skunk smell. Although, I do wish her well on a new job search. I don't wish ill on anyone ever. But I am just glad she's no longer my problem to deal with. Added 2 months after she was fired, by the way, I am actually gaining on my work. I'm not only not behind on my work, I'm actually getting it done soon enough to work on extra stuff. Also, out of the blue, we've started getting about 3 to 4 sales and scam calls every day since Sally left, for things like better Medicare benefits, better retirement benefits, and even one time recently where Walgreens was calling to ask if I still had diabetes. I'm convinced Sally signed us up for calls as retaliation. I hope they die down soon, especially as they are starting to get rude. Our response to every one of these is, "Sorry, this is a business." This one guy responded to me with, "This is my job." I said, "I understand this is your job, but this is a business. I am not allowed to take personal calls." He said, "Why?" I said very slowly and firmly, "Because I'm working." He started to say, "Can you explain to me why dash?" I hung up. Jerk.